So just a check into those online. Can you just make sure that you can you hear us okay? Thumbs up or a yes would be ace. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Good to have a reminder. Yeah, if we kick off with a public participation session, I'll just preface that because we've had a lot of interest in the main, and just to explain that an application to Shropshire Council for them to determine whether the applicant needs to do an environmental impact assessment or not, and it's called a screening options application. It's not something we get consulted on. It's not anything we need to have a say on. In due course, if it becomes a planning application, it'll still come to us like all the normal things, but it could very well happen that the Shropshire Council say they've got to have an environmental impact assessment, and then for whatever reason they decide not to bring an application forward because they can't resolve whatever's in that impact assessment, then we won't hear any more about it. It was important, I think, just to make sure everybody's aware of that, because there's obviously been a lot of interest about us having an opinion on it. In general, they're not a very common application. There are 78 application types that Shropshire Council do, and generally we only look at outline applications, full applications, and listed building consent applications. They've been in existence for a decade or more, these type of applications, but because they're fairly infrequent, you generally don't see them on a day-to-day basis. But it is fair comment for members of the public to be aware, having seen the application, that there is the potential for something to come down the line. But it's important for us to reassure you that you will get your opportunity to comment on anything when it comes. And if anything, you've got more forewarning, so you've got more time to prepare should an application come, to actually get your ducks in a row for that application. So the consultation deadline that's on the portal, just for Shropshire Council to make a decision, that's their deadline. I have asked officers to change the presentation of the actual description of the application to make it more transparent, that it's not aimed at the public necessarily, but so we'll see how that goes. Any questions from the members of the public?
I think they do want to speak.
No question.
Oh yeah, no, the floor's yours.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Some of you will know me. I'm Martin Jones, and currently I'm now Chair of Oswestry Rural Parish Council. Should this move from the Mount, obviously, move from an EIA into an actual planning application, we would respectfully request of you that we become involved in the consultation part of it. Should this application go forward, it can and will have a detrimental effect upon the parishes that surround, and that's all parishes. That includes Gaboyne and Salatin, as well as Trevonna, Treflack, Morda, and to a degree Mile End, where we fill in at Maysbury. The effect on public services, which are already stressed and stretched to a limit, will mean that our residents, as well as your own, will struggle getting doctor's appointments. We've got a large development going ahead, and we've got some others in the pipeline. So doctors are full, dentists the same. You can't get an NHS dentist. Policing, the policing presence is virtually non-existent. As for an ambulance, and I can speak for recent personal experience, we couldn't get an ambulance 4 times for my son. We had to try and carry him, manhandle him into a van. The fire department, we've already asked you and Shropshire Council and the forces about moving it to the Innovation Park. The position that it's in would be greatly affected by that amount of traffic coming in and out, and response times would suffer. As for the schools, right, Woodside already stretched. The only one that is remotely walkable from that area. The Meadows, you can't walk to. You'd have to drive. Again, it's well subscribed, same as Holy Trinity, and they've got 600 homes plus that are going to be requiring. Whittington oversubscribed and has suffered major development recently. Morda, which is us, is at virtual capacity and has had a lot of development recently. Trevonin, you would have to drive to, and again, Hayes Barn was refused on the grounds that access and egress to that site was very, very difficult and dangerous, and the road couldn't support the additional traffic. So how is it going to manage 350 homes, 700 cars plus? Flooding, and I've got photographs on my phone that will probably be from someone that's currently on Teams. The back of Lamforda, it drains down. Mitigation has been put in to stop flooding there, but we're going to get to in the near future where to navigate Welsh Walls, you're going to need a kayak. And it seems to us, in light of what's gone on today and recently, that the planning department is failing us. They're supposed to work to deliver development that will enhance and improve people's lives and the community and the town as a whole. If this goes forward, it will be to the detriment of Oswestry and the people that live here. Never mind trying to navigate. If you go to Ellesmere, because of the recent development, it's gridlocked in the morning and of an evening. Now, some of you will also know that we do water testing, and we will happily share with you the photographs, of which Councillor Campbell has by the outflow at Maysbury Road. Literally the width of the table. From this side it's a dark brown, from that side it's black. How was that sewage system going to cope with the additional strains that are going to be put on it, and where is it going to go? If this goes forward, it needs to be called in. Thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. I'll just come to you a second, if that's right. In terms of Shropshire Council Planning Department failing, I will declare my interest now as Shropshire Council with the portfolio for planning, even though it's a strategic role in planning. But the issue we've got strategically is there's no 5-year land supply and there's no local plan. So at the moment, everybody's vulnerable to random unplanned development popping up like mushrooms in a darkened room.
Sorry, just on that one point. The planning department do not engage with councils. They only engage with the developers. They do not engage with councils and parish councils. They only engage with the developers. And so we're not able to help with constructive development in a way that would benefit areas, rather than it's in isolation and that's the only way we're going to deal with it.
And to go answer that point, and then I'll move on to the other member. We're trying to change the whole system to make it more proactive and engage people and the public in the pre-application process much further on than what normally happens. Because if you actually get to the point of a notice appearing somewhere, it's often too late to do anything. So you need to design problems out at the outset so they're actually designed well and mitigated everything before they even come to planning. Then the government's happy because planning gets decided quickly, but essentially all the grafting's been done way, way, way before that. So we're trying to push hard to do all those kind of things. If I take the other gentleman.
Hello, thank you for your time. My name is Ian Campbell. I'm a Oswestry Rural Parish Councillor. Just on the point that Martin Jones made, we do test water and we're testing it, and that's expanding now into other parishes and people are very interested in it. I have stopped 4 times because of the weather right next to the sewage works to go and have a look at it since our last tests, and it's quite apparent that any improvements that might have been made are not working now. And I think other mitigating circumstances, such as holding water back, should now be made available. There's a huge amount of houses going in those services. But I particularly wanted to talk about, as an example of the planners integrating with us as the people in the area, with Liberty Travel as an example. That recently has been pulled back in. It was looked at. The planners wanted it called back in because they were concerned that we hadn't made sufficient reason as to why that application should not be accepted. It was a very close vote on the next call-in, and it managed to go through. Now, when you look at the power that that has after everyone has come in and given their views, I objected on 3 or 4 occasions, and I went to speak at Shropshire Council, and I think the planning view was that there wasn't sufficient reason, because of the objections I raised, not to stop that application going through, which is why it was called back in. Now, my point is that before I made my objections, I looked, obviously, to find out what type of objection is acceptable and has been carried through in the past. Now, I know that 4 or 5 perfectly good reasons as to why that application didn't need to be called back in, yet it was called back in. Now, this is clearly going to be a pattern, because if people are paying money to have a consultation with the planning department and they're minded to give them all the help they need, and the public and the people that live in Oswestry Town and the rural environment are not given that same ear, then we are heading for a major problem. And there is already people that are coming to me saying they're becoming quite nervous about the way things are going. Now, that in mind, the only way, the planning authority got called in on a chicken shed and they lost. That costs money. And this is all about money, it seems. It's always about other people's money and money. That's the only thing that speaks. So you have a situation where lots of houses are being built. You're all going to make money out of that because you're going to get SIL money, you're going to get development money, and you know, it's all spread about. And I think it would be worth thinking about that money and look at the question mark of judicial review. Everyone talks about it. Everyone thinks it's far too expensive. But at some point, not necessarily Liberty Travel, but another, you are going to have to call in that decision-making with a judicial review. And the chicken shed is quite an example of someone's efforts to actually bring them to book and question what their motivation is and how they're delivering and who are they delivering for. Because it doesn't seem to be for the people that constantly harass me about what have I done to represent them. Okay? I'm not paid, but you still have that conscience and that duty to try and bring this forward in a way that people might understand. So, I know you're all thinking, oh, we should be quiet now, but you are going to have to think about it. You have the money. Oswestry Town has the money to show that they have teeth. And at some point, you need to make that decision. And I would like to say thank you for listening to me. I know it's difficult, but thank you.
Yeah, no, well, with the chicken sheds thing, that it's open to anybody to JR the process and the legality of the way decisions have been made and whether it's been applied properly. not necessarily the town council or any specific thing, but you could be anybody that could actually do it.
Town council, I think, with something that's happening in their town, should be thinking about it and should call it in.
Yeah, but that's a tool that's
Yeah,
available
it
for
is
sure.
a tool
Yeah,
that you
yeah.
have, and I'd love
Yeah.
you to sort of remind them that you have that tool.
Okay. But to square off the two things you both said about the Mount site, there are a lot of issues around that in terms of location, the actual landscape and the drainage and the services and accessibility and all sorts of things. So those will all get weighed up in due time when it becomes an application. Yeah. But there are other reviews coming along in terms of changing sill, changing suds to make suds stronger, and all sorts of other things. But that's within the other hat. So, okay. Anybody else want to? Okay. Item 2, apologies for absence.
Apologies from absence from Councillor McKinney, the Mayor, Councillor Brindley, Councillor Moore, Councillor Wilson. Is anybody else not here? Councillor Mark Roberts as well. Yeah.
Item 2B, disclosure of councillors' interests in any matters to be in relation to the code of conduct on items that are on the agenda. I've already said my bit about Shropshire Council. I'll just repeat it because it's a strategic role and I don't get involved in individual applications, just for clarity.
The usual, isn't it?
Failed to even see the power switch. There you go. It's the usual, the fact that I have to declare I'm a vice chair of Shropshire Council Northern Area Planning Committee, and that any decisions made at that meeting will be on information and evidence presented at that meeting. It doesn't stop me from making observations at a parish level, and anything I say tonight will be observations.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting, is everybody happy they're a true and accurate record? Let's second it. Okay. Everybody in favour of that? Thank you. Planning applications. Too many things open on that. The Furrows applications, the first one. Does anybody want to kick off with that? James.
I made a comment personally as the Shropshire Councillor as well, but I want to reiterate the comment that I considered of. It does specify a certain, I can't remember what the unit is, of lighting at 500, I think it's candelas per metre or something. I feel like that's too bright at night, especially given its location being able to be visible from the hill fort, etc. And therefore I would ask that maybe there's some consideration to reduce the planning have a specification in the planning application that that's reduced to 200 or 300 at night to allow for sort of darker skies, etc.
Jonathan.
In addition to the lighting, is there any risk of any graphic display being distracting to drivers going past, especially at night?
Any other comments from anybody? They've done it already, haven't they? So I deliberately looked as I've gone past on the way in, but I didn't necessarily think there's any more distraction than there was anything there before. So are you proposing that we accept it subject to that?
I propose it's a neutral comment. I don't think we need to support it, but we just advise that it would be interesting to see whether they can lower the light levels at night.
Yeah. Is everybody in favour of that, please? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, still ask for opinion. internal alterations to form a guest room and annex. Has anybody got any comments on? Is it? Yeah, I was going to say that didn't look right. Yeah. Jane.
Having looked at it, it's a matter of it's reversible changes inside that aren't listed on the listing, and therefore I don't feel there's any comments that need to be made.
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay, so everybody's happy with that. Then you've got the variation of condition application for the water treatment works. Has anybody got any comments on that one?
This is a difficult, given the complexity of the site, and we haven't even been able to pull together a meaningful set of slides for you because it's such a complicated issue. So.
Residents raised to me is a time that the work has gone on by and the amount of work that's still going on in the evening and night. So I don't know if the planning, I suppose it could be, but the planning condition would be to not have work in the evening, at weekends or at night, because that is very disturbing for residents who are living nearby. I think they're faced with another 2 or 3 years of work before they're finished anyway. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, no, it's a common complaint when work's going on, so I think it's entirely reasonable to say there needs to be a limit on the movement and when they're doing it, and making sure they're cleaning up the road after they've been in and out and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Beyond me. The road doesn't mean too much of a problem. It should be that they're not allowed to access a major field, and I think generally that's complied with, so they're coming from the other way. So it's not so much of, although carry on that, it's the hours of work in which has caused them.
Okay, so everybody's happy with that as an observation then? Okay. Then you've got 56 to 60 Willow Street, which is a listed building consent. We've already objected to the full application, which is still pending decision. So anybody got any comments on?
Having looked at the amendment, they have actually written a letter in response to our objection, which goes through the reasons for objecting on open space and explaining the reasons why that probably wouldn't be applicable. So I feel we might want to remove some of the comments that we did make around those areas. In general, as I said at the time, I feel like it's an application that, given what is happening in other applications that are being accepted in the area, it's one that isn't, well, probably will be going through planning at this stage, and therefore making sure that we're commenting to get some conditions added that help would probably be more useful in supporting the application rather than objecting to it.
Can I As a local member, I would move that we actually do continue our objection. By all means, take account of the comments made on open spaces and perhaps water down that element of the objection. But the other objections we had in terms of the development of this area, the keeping of that area and the loss of very valuable space that is used currently for as an art gallery and a community space is to the detriment of the town.
Are you happy with doing it that way around, James, or?
I'm just worried. Like, it's an observation. I feel like it being used as an art gallery isn't necessarily planning.
Change of planning status for that building.
If it's a change of use of the building, then it's relevant in planning terms. If it's just what's occupying the same use, then it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, affect that, you've got to change use.
Yeah, but as I've said, that's the other application. It's not necessarily the listed building element. That you're talking about the fabric of the listed building and any bits that are associated with it by being attached to it, which also become listed. That's the nub of this particular application, not necessarily outside space even. So, when
Have we actually objected to this listed building part of it? So this is a new debate as far as it goes. Because looking at it myself, I think as long as the conservation people and the listing people are happy, the fact that there's two empty townhouses on the main street at the moment that are really getting quite dilapidated and not being used, if any progress, any sort of improvement on that, I think we should support, because it would improve the outlook, I think, of Willow Street personally. It used to be a garage. Always cut as far as it's never looked particularly nice with the glass. Obviously, if the museum and things would still be there, but I think we do need to sort of support sort of an improvement to the street scene personally.
Just going to say, why are we sure that the gallery is going to be there? Because the gallery had no awareness of the previous planning application until after it went in. So, unless they've said that they're planning to stay there, I can't see them sticking. They're going, yeah, yeah. I don't think the art gallery is going to stay there if this happens. I mean, they're customers of ours, and they came in and said, we've got no idea about this application until after it had gone in. So, and they certainly at that point were saying it wouldn't be financially viable.
Request for information, where is the art gallery on the map? Is it where it's labelled coffee shop now? In other words, at the entrance to the left-hand side where is that correct?
It's all of the section marked coffee shop, plus I think the orangey coloured section next to it.
Which is kitchen and living and things.
Yeah, basically all that block. So,
because that's the listed block, isn't it?
yeah, that is the whole of the.
Sorry, I can't show you. It's on my laptop, but I can't project it. So.
You need the link from your email, not the
That bit
one
there.
that was in PDF.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's that section there.
It's that whole section there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I make a proposal?
go on then.
Based on because it is a listed building, I feel like we should accept the comments as far as the listed building. It does actually say that it does enhance Willow Streets, because it brings it back to a state where it was previously, so. But I think for this application, we just accept the comments, rather than object or etc., just accept neutrally that the comments made by the conservation officer.
So you recommended approval for the listed building application with the addendum of the comments about the general application. And Jonathan's abstained. Nothing else, so close the meeting. Thank you very much. That was a light tap.
Next year it'll be much louder.